Forza, Need for Speed, or even Mario Kart. Those and many more are very popular racing games that most of you have probably played at least once in your life. They are basically the icons of racing games. However, there's one racing game that's really flying under the radar. That game, or rather a gaming franchise, is Trackmania. What is the game? Is it good? I'll be answering these questions in this video. Now, what is Trackmania? Where does it come from? How are Trackmanias made? Well, you see, when a mommy Trackmania and a daddy Trackmania really love each other. Trackmania was created by Nadeo, a small French gaming developing studio which in 2009 was bought by Ubisoft. They released the series' first installment in 2003 and have released 14 more games since then. Over the course of these games, many new playstyles were introduced, different environments like the classic desert or the very popular stadium. Each of these had their own unique car with unique characteristics to match. Then, in the year 2006, Nadeo released two new games, Trackmania Nations and Trackmania United. Nations was free and featured the stadium as a new environment. United was basically the same game with one key difference. You had to pay for it, yes, but in exchange you got not just the stadium, but also the previous environments being desert, snow, rally, island, bay, and coast. Fast forward 2 years and Nadeo re-released both games with some improvements like an updated UI and some other additions. Since Trackmania games all work the same way, it doesn't really matter which game I talk about, so in order to give you a decent overview of what the games are like, I'll just use one game, that being Trackmania Nations Forever. Let's start with the gameplay first. Trackmania's gameplay is so easy to learn that, heck, even a toddler could play it. I mean, you only really need 4 keys to play the game, 2 more to respawn and reset, but that's basically it. Now, you can play with a keyboard and have a pretty good experience. I mean, that's how I learned to play the game, and I can still do it pretty consistently and decently. But you can also play with a controller if you prefer analog steering. Or, yeah, you could just play with this thing. Don't ask me how I got that idea, it just happened one day, alright? I already tried it, and it most certainly wasn't worth it. I would not suggest you to do this. Anyway, your objective in the game is relatively simple. Get to the finish line of whatever track you're playing and do that as fast as possible. You also need to drive through these checkpoints here, otherwise the finish line won't work. The difficulty of the tracks in the game's campaign are signified by color, with white being the easiest and then so on and so forth. There are also a few different types of tracks, which you all have to play differently. There's race, where you just have to get to the end as fast as possible, without worrying about anything else, just your typical racing game stuff. Then there's speed, which is all about managing... it's about managing speed, that's what the name is for. Then there's acrobatics, which is more about pulling off some fancy jumps, endurance tracks which have multiple laps, and finally, obstacles, tracks that test your skills at avoiding stuff like pillars on the road. Aside from regular roads, the game occasionally has you driving on dirt, which has completely different physics. Like completely different. You drift way easier and you just slide around way more, you lose a lot more speed, stuff like that. There's also grass, but that is extremely rare and it functions basically the same way as dirt. Now, as I've already said before, your main objective is to beat a track as fast as possible. Each track is a set of medals that are awarded after your final time is lower than that of the medal. There's bronze, which is really easy, silver, a little bit more challenging, and gold, with each one being progressively harder to obtain. You also need to get a specific amount of gold medals, being pretty much all of them, to even get access to the hardest tracks. And once you get there, you'll be able to challenge the author times for each level to get a new exclusive medal. Alternatively, you can just hold shift and type unlock in the main menu to get access to every track and the author times immediately. That's how I did it. Getting the author medal means that you are truly done with the track. It doesn't just mean that you beat it, but it's also proof that you're a better player than the Frenchman who made the track. The quest for the author medals is a challenging one. You better map the reset function to a convenient key or button, because resetting is something you'll do, like, a lot. Sometimes it's just because you're falling behind and you have no way of taking the lead again, or something like this happens. Most of the game's tracks are somewhat tough, but still manageable. Once you reach the red tracks, however, things start to get real spicy. There are some tracks that I absolutely loathe, like AO6 for having the worst final jump in the entire game's campaign, and BO6 for having a second jump that, if you don't get it just right, can cost you the author medal. However, both of those are nothing in comparison to D14 Endurance. An absolute hellhole of a track featuring 3 laps of tight turns that force you to slow down in time if you don't want to crash into a wall. This track is so damn annoying that even one of its former world record holders doesn't want to play it anymore. Good job, Nadeo, you really did it this time. And now, it's finally time. The red tracks have fallen, with some struggles, and it's time to challenge the game's final frontier. The black tracks. These tracks are a true test of your skill. They are so difficult that I only have 1 silver medal and 2 gold medals. I never even finished the last 2 tracks. EO1 is this extremely difficult race with a pretty annoying jump close to the end. EO2 is the spaghetti level. EO3 is a dirt track with a pretty annoying layout and a lot of jumps which can actually cause landing bugs, which will cause you to lose speed if you get them. Then there's EO4 being this really tough obstacle course. And finally, EO5. This track has 60 laps and the author time is 1 hour. Can you imagine how irritating it is to even play this track? I have failed so many times, a lot of times just before I would manage to get the author medal, that I'm really considering giving up on this one. However, let's say you beat every author time in the game. Does that mean you're done? No. No, it doesn't. Not by a long shot. The game features a track editor which allows you to make your very own tracks. These tracks and their associated files can be shared with your friends who also have the game, which then enables them to play the track and see if they are better than you. Of course, the same can be done with replay files. You can also upload your track files online for people all around the world. You yourself can also play tracks that others have created. If you want the largest selection of tracks that possibly existing for Trackmania Nations Forever, then I suggest you go hit up Trackmania Exchange. There are a lot of them. So, in summary, is the game good? Well, its visuals are certainly dated, especially when compared to Trackmania 2020, but it still looks really good for something that was made in the Windows XP era. In terms of gameplay, you can have a lot of fun with the game. It's very easy to pick up and it has a really high skill ceiling. So there's not really a chance that you would just be a master at the game in like 20 hours or so. The campaign already has 65 tracks, and if that's not enough for you, you can always make more or download more. So if you really want to get into the series or at least try it out, then start with Nations Forever. It's free and, unlike TM 2020, doesn't require a subscription to access all of the game's features. Also, if you decide to play the game on Steam, there might be some problems that you'd need to work around. That aside though, to conclude my summary, this game is definitely an experience worth your time. And if you want a bit more, then upgrade to United Forever and get access to every Trackmania environment that came before 2006. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be trying EO5 again. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like. It doesn't cost you anything and it helps me out. That does it for today though. See you some other time and have a good day. Peace out.